Imagine your leg snaps clean in half. Not a sprain, not a bruise, a full fracture, out in the open, miles from anything resembling help. No hospital, no painkillers, no crutches. Just you, a shattered bone, and a body that is about to make a decision that determines whether you live or die in the next few hours. Now here's the part that should bother you. This wasn't a rare event for your ancestors. It happened constantly, and somehow, some of them survived it. The question is how, and the answer is stranger than you'd expect. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about broken bones. In the wild, a broken leg is usually a death sentence. Ask any zoologist. A gazelle with a fractured leg gets eaten within hours. A wolf that shatters its hip starves within days. Movement means survival, and a body that can't move is a body that becomes lunch for something else. So when scientists started digging up ancient human skeletons and finding healed fractures, real, properly healed, weight-bearing fractures, they had a serious problem on their hands. How does a soft, slow, clawless primate survive an injury that would kill almost every other animal on the savanna? Here's where it gets stranger before it gets clearer. Some of the very first evidence of this puzzle doesn't even come from humans, it comes from Lucy. You've probably heard of Lucy, the famous 3.2-million-year-old skeleton discovered in Ethiopia, one of the earliest known human ancestors. In 2016, a researcher at the University of Texas published findings suggesting Lucy herself may have died from a fall out of a tree, her bones showing fractures consistent with a serious, high-impact drop. If true, it means one of our earliest ancestors' final moments were spent exactly where you'd expect a small tree-climbing primate to get hurt, falling a lot. Which raises an obvious question. If falling and breaking bones was this common, this early, how did the species survive long enough for you to exist at all? Let's go back nearly 70,000 years to a cave in northern Iraq called Shanidar. In the 1950s, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal man researchers now call Shanidar 1, and his skeleton told a story that shouldn't have been possible. His right arm had been amputated, likely decades before his death, the bone completely healed over into a smooth, rounded stump. He was also blind in one eye and showed signs of a serious skull injury and significant hearing loss. This was a man missing an arm, partially blind and partially deaf, living in an Ice Age landscape full of predators. Here's the part that stops most people cold. He lived for years after that injury, maybe decades. In a world where you needed two hands to hunt, to climb, to defend yourself, this man survived with one arm for what researchers estimate was a significant portion of his adult life. So how does someone that disabled make it through even a single winter, let alone years? The answer isn't heroic individual toughness, it's something far more interesting. It's other people. Because a one-armed, half-blind Neanderthal doesn't survive an ice age by being tough. He survives because someone else brought him food. Someone else helped him move. Someone else, probably several someones, decided that keeping him alive was worth the cost. Anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus, who has spent years studying Shanidar 1, has argued that his survival is direct physical evidence of prehistoric compassion, not a nice idea about ancient humans, actual bone-deep proof. But hold on, because it gets even stranger. In 2020, archaeologists working in a cave in northern Israel found something almost unbelievable. The foot bones of a young adult showing clear signs of a serious fracture, the kind of injury that, without help, means you cannot walk, you cannot hunt, you cannot gather food. In the ruthless math of prehistoric survival, you become a liability the group has to abandon or a mouth someone else has to feed. They chose to feed him. The bone had healed properly, which means for weeks, possibly months, someone in that community brought this person food, protected him from danger, and gave him the stillness he needed for a shattered foot to knit itself back together.
This wasn't an isolated miracle. Researchers studying prehistoric skeletons worldwide keep finding the same pattern over and over in populations with no contact with each other across tens of thousands of years. Broken bones that healed well, which means someone, somewhere, again and again, made the same quiet decision: keep them alive. Now here's a twist that changes the whole picture. Not every fracture healed with outside help alone. Some ancient humans appear to have actively treated their injuries. Archaeological evidence from later prehistoric periods shows people packing broken limbs in wet clay, which hardened as it dried into something remarkably similar to a modern cast. Splints made from wood and bark, tied tightly enough to hold a bone in alignment while it fused back together, appear in the archaeological record long before anyone had a medical degree or a word for orthopedics.
Which raises an unsettling question. How did they figure this out? The honest answer is trial and error, repeated across thousands of generations. Someone, at some point, noticed that a limb held still healed straighter than one left to flop around. Someone noticed that clay packed around a wound dried hard and kept things in place. That knowledge didn't come from a textbook. It came from watching, from failing, from occasionally succeeding, and then passing that success on to the next person who broke a bone. Prehistoric medicine wasn't stupid. It was just slow, brutal, and built entirely on repetition. And it wasn't only broken bones they were experimenting on. Archaeologists have found skulls from as far back as 5000 BCE showing signs of trepanation, a procedure where a hole was deliberately cut into a living person's skull. And here's the detail that should genuinely surprise you. Many of these skulls show new bone growth around the edges of the hole. That means the patient didn't just survive the surgery itself, they lived long enough afterward for the bone to start healing over. Somebody, using nothing but a sharp stone and presumably a very steady hand, was performing actual survivable surgery on another human being thousands of years before anyone understood what bacteria was, let alone how to sterilize a blade. Which tells you ancient medicine wasn't limited to broken bones at all. It was a whole quiet body of trial and error knowledge, refined generation after generation purely because people kept trying to save each other. But here's where the story gets genuinely dark, because not every injury had a happy ending. Archaeologists have also found non-union fractures, bones that never healed correctly, fusing at strange angles, or forming what's called a false joint, essentially a broken bone that partially healed into a permanently damaged, semi-functional new shape. A fossilized ulna found at a site called Krapina shows exactly this kind of injury. Researchers spent years debating whether it was evidence of a botched amputation or simply a fracture that healed badly on its own, and the debate itself tells you something important. Even experts studying these bones today, with X-rays and modern forensic tools, sometimes can't tell the difference between deliberate ancient surgery and a body just doing its stubborn best to survive damage. Some of these individuals clearly lived for years afterward, walking on limbs that never should have worked again, adapting to a body that no longer functioned the way it used to. Which tells you something remarkable about the human body itself. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It doesn't require a doctor, a hospital, or modern medicine to attempt healing. Given even a rough chance, bone tissue starts rebuilding itself immediately, forming a soft callus around the break within days, and slowly hardening into new solid bone over the following weeks. This process hasn't changed since Shanidar 1. Your body still does this exact thing right now, quietly, automatically, without you ever telling it to.
Here's a comparison worth sitting with for a second. A modern hip fracture, even today, with surgeons, anesthesia, and physical therapy, carries a surprisingly high mortality rate in elderly patients, largely because prolonged bed rest itself becomes dangerous. Now imagine that same injury thousands of years ago with none of that medical support. And yet archaeologists have found a healed hip fracture in an ancient Nubian woman dating back roughly 3,000 years, the oldest confirmed case of its kind. She didn't just survive the initial break, she survived the weeks of stillness, the risk of infection, the total dependence on others, in a world with none of the safety nets we now consider basic. So here's what all of this actually adds up to. Ancient humans survived broken legs not primarily because of any single medical breakthrough, but because of two things working together: a body that stubbornly insists on healing itself if given the chance, and a social group willing to carry that cost for weeks or months without any guarantee of a return. That's the real discovery hiding inside these old bones. Survival was never just a personal trait, it was a group decision, made silently, over and over, every time someone in a prehistoric community chose to feed, protect, and wait for someone who couldn't currently contribute anything back. Every single one of us alive today is descended from people who were, at some point, on the receiving end of exactly that kind of care, because the ones who weren't cared for simply didn't survive to have descendants at all. And here's the detail that ties every single one of these stories together, whether it's a shattered foot in Israel, a missing arm in Iraq, or a skull with a hole cut into it in some nameless village thousands of years before writing existed. Not one of these people healed alone. Every single case required someone else to make a decision, quietly, without ceremony, day after day, to keep showing up. Think about what that actually means for you, sitting here right now. Somewhere in your ancestral line, probably more than once, someone broke a bone badly enough that they should have died, and instead, another person or a whole small group of people decided the cost of keeping them alive was worth paying. No contract, no guarantee, no promise of anything in return. Just a choice repeated across tens of thousands of years that eventually produced you. So the next time you sprain an ankle and reach for a bag of ice without a second thought, remember what that same injury used to require. Not a pharmacy, not a doctor, just someone deciding you were worth keeping around long enough to heal. Your leg snapping in half was never really a death sentence for your ancestors. It was a test of who was standing next to them when it happened. And somehow, again and again, across tens of thousands of years, the answer was someone stayed.